My name is Alex Mercer. I'm 45 years old and I'm a high-frequency trader in Miami, Florida. Over the past 10 years, I've built considerable wealth trading millions on the stock market. My specialty has always been detecting patterns, anticipating market movements, and reacting in split seconds. This skill brought me wealth, but also taught me a valuable lesson. Observe everything. React with ice-cold precision. By my side was Serena, my 38-year-old wife. She was a wellness guru and digital influencer with over 200,000 Instagram followers. Our life in South Beach seemed perfect. Penthouse apartment overlooking the ocean, luxury cars, trips to exotic destinations. I was the silent provider, the strategist who ensured our wealth, while she shined on social media preaching about balance and spiritual connections. If you like stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, subscribe to the channel now. There are 2 new unreleased stories here every day, and each one is more impactful than the last. For months, I noticed subtle changes in Serena's behavior. She started investing heavily in obscure cryptocurrencies, constantly talking about financial freedom without banks. She appeared with a second phone that she guarded religiously. Leo Maxwell, her personal trainer and supposed spiritual guide, was increasingly present in our home. At 35, Leo had the typical charm of someone who lives off appearances. Perfect smile, defined muscles, and smooth talk that impressed his female clients. My trader's intuition, trained to detect fraud and market manipulation, started sounding alarms. I recognized the signs of a pump-and-dump scheme, except this time, I was the target. During secretive calls she thought I couldn't hear, I caught fragments about offshore accounts and escape plans. Leo always whispered something about total freedom when he thought I wasn't paying attention. I decided to act as I would in a risky market operation, collect data, prepare contingencies, and wait for the right moment. I discreetly set up a monitoring system on our digital devices, a honeypot that would allow me to track all suspicious transactions. I quietly transferred most of my assets to an irrevocable trust under my exclusive control. Serena had no idea that her financial movements were being documented in real time. I hired Frank Miller, an ethical ex-hacker who had become a private investigator specializing in digital fraud. Frank had an impressive track record exposing scammers who took advantage of relationships to steal fortunes. Together, we activated a remote kill switch on the accounts Serena thought she had full access to. Then the day came. Serena announced a 10-day trip to a spiritual retreat in the Caribbean. "I need to reconnect with myself," she said, kissing my forehead with tenderness that I now know was completely fake. "You understand, right, Alex? Sometimes we need to step away to find clarity." "Of course," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Enjoy the retreat." The next morning, I woke up to an email that would change everything. The subject was simple: freedom. The message, cold and direct, read, "Alex, I found someone who truly understands me. I've emptied our accounts. Goodbye." Attached was a photo of Serena and Leo smiling on a paradise beach, drinking expensive champagne that had been bought with my money. The shock was immense, but my mind, conditioned by years of reacting to market crashes, immediately took control. I felt the humiliation burn in my chest, anger rise in my throat, but I converted these emotions into something much more powerful: ice-cold calm and an immediate action plan. While processing the scam I had just discovered, Frank Miller called. "Alex, you need to see this," he said, his voice loaded with urgency. "What they did is much worse than we imagined." Frank had intercepted communications between Serena and Leo from recent weeks. The spiritual retreat was an elaborate hoax. They weren't just stealing my money. They were executing a much broader scheme. Leo had a criminal history that Serena knew perfectly well. He had already pulled similar scams in at least 3 previous relationships, always posing as a spiritual guru to gain victims' trust. "They plan to use your reputation as a traitor to give credibility to a pyramid scheme," Frank explained. Serena had already recruited some of her wealthier followers, promising impossible returns through her connections in the financial market. Namely, you. The evidence was overwhelming. I had access to audio recordings where Serena explained to Leo how she intended to use my identity to attract investors. "Alex is respected in financial circles," she said in one recording. "When I say he's behind the investments, they'll trust blindly. Once we have enough money, we disappear." Leo responded, "What if he finds out first?" "He won't find out anything," Serena laughed. "Alex lives in his own world, focused on screens. He doesn't even notice what happens around him." How wrong she was. Frank showed me the escape plans they had prepared meticulously. Fake passports, accounts in tax havens, even alternative identities were already ready. They intended to disappear in the Caribbean and continue the scam by posing as a couple of spiritual mentors who had found the formula for wealth through consciousness. But there was one detail they didn't know. My kill switch was already working. 3 hours after the freedom email, my phone rang. It was Serena, but her voice no longer had the calculated sweetness of before. She was in total panic. "Alex! Alex, answer!" she screamed. "Something's wrong with the accounts. The money isn't here." I let the phone ring until it went to voicemail. Then Frank called me, laughing. "They're desperate," he said. "Serena called 3 different banks trying to locate the funds. Leo is threatening bank managers over the phone. They think it was a system error." What they didn't know was that every penny they thought they had stolen was being automatically redirected to security accounts supervised by Frank. The cryptocurrency wallets they created to launder the money were also drained by our system. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Voice messages arrived one after another. In the first, Serena still tried to maintain the charade. "Alex, honey, there was a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Please call me back." In the second, the masks started falling. "Alex, I need to talk to you urgently. Something's wrong with the banking system. Our money disappeared." In the third, it was pure desperation. "Alex, for God's sake, what did you do? Where is the money?" Leo also started sending me messages. The first were veiled threats. "Alex, you don't know who you're messing with. Better resolve this civilly." Then they became direct threats. "I know where you live, Alex. If you don't return our money, there will be consequences." Our money. The audacity was impressive. Frank intercepted calls where they tried to hire lawyers in different countries, but the fraudulent transactions were already marked as illegal by the systems we implemented. Every move they made was being documented and reported to relevant authorities. "They hired a law firm in Miami," Frank informed me. "They want to sue you for theft and financial sabotage." The lawyers asked for transaction documentation. "And what did you do?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I delivered a folder with 300 pages of evidence of their fraud. Audio, video, transaction history, intercepted communications, everything. The lawyers dropped the case in 2 hours. Meanwhile, I maintained absolute silence. I didn't respond to a single message, didn't answer any calls. My lack of reaction was making them even more desperate, and they started making bigger and bigger mistakes. Serena posted a crying video on Instagram, asking her followers for help, finding lost funds due to banking problems. Leo appeared on a Facebook Live claiming he was being persecuted by dark forces in the financial system. They didn't know that every word was being recorded, and that their own public statements were providing more evidence against them. The trap was closing, and they were tightening the noose themselves. Serena and Leo's desperation was growing exponentially. Frank showed me real-time interceptions, and it was fascinating to observe how they were destroying themselves with their own actions. "They're doing exactly what amateur criminals do when they panic," Frank commented, leaving a trail of evidence impossible to ignore. Serena had done something that completely sealed her fate. She posted a 20-minute YouTube video explaining her version of the story. In it, she claimed I was a controlling husband who had hijacked the couple's money to prevent her from seeking her true spiritual happiness. She even showed fake bank statements, suggesting the money was legitimately hers. What she didn't know was that every document she showed was a sloppy forgery that Frank had traced to the print shop where they were produced. Additionally, she inadvertently admitted in the video that she had reorganized the couple's assets without my knowledge, a confession of fraud in high-definition video. Leo, meanwhile, started blackmailing former clients. He sent emails to wealthy women in Miami he had worked with as a personal trainer, threatening to expose personal secrets unless they paid exorbitant amounts. Needless to say, Frank had already copied all these emails and forwarded them to the FBI. They turned a case of marital fraud into a federal investigation, Frank laughed. Blackmail across state lines, use of falsified documents, conspiracy to commit bank fraud. They practically wrote their own indictment. Meanwhile, I maintained my normal routine. I continued trading on the stock exchange, attending business meetings, living my life as if nothing had happened. Colleagues commented that I seemed more focused than ever, sharper in market analysis. They didn't know I was applying the same risk analysis techniques I used to detect corporate fraud. The situation became even more interesting when Serena tried to return to Miami. She showed up at the international airport thinking she could simply resume her normal life. What she found was a customs officer who politely informed her there were some issues that needed to be clarified before her entry into the country. Frank had coordinated with federal authorities for her to be detained for questioning the moment she set foot on American soil. Not arrest, yet, but temporary detention that allowed investigators access to all her electronic devices. They found everything, Frank reported to me. Conversations about pyramid schemes, fraud planning, even searches about countries without extradition treaties. She literally carried all the evidence on her phone. Leo, who had stayed in the Caribbean, began to realize he was alone. He tried to throw all the blame on Serena, sending messages to my lawyers offering cooperation in exchange for immunity. In the messages, he claimed Serena had manipulated him and that he was just a victim of her charm. These messages were the final shot in his own foot. They not only confirmed his active participation in the scheme, but also revealed additional details about other crimes they had planned to commit after fleeing with my money. The public exposure was devastating. Serena's Instagram followers, who had initially sympathized with her dramatic video, began turning against her when evidence of the fraud leaked to gossip blogs and financial news sites. Screenshots of her conversations with Leo circulated on social media, showing how she mocked her own followers, calling them suckers willing to pay for any spiritual nonsense. Look at this, Frank showed me the tablet. The video where she cried asking for financial help now has 50,000 dislikes and 15,000 negative comments. The followers themselves are posting evidence of how she tried to sell them investment schemes using your name. One victim, a 60-year-old businesswoman named Margaret Thompson, had invested $100,000 in an exclusive fund that Serena guaranteed was being managed by me. Margaret posted her own video, showing all transaction documents and explaining how Serena had used my reputation to convince her to invest. I trusted her because she said her husband, Alex Mercer, was a famous trader who had developed a revolutionary strategy, Margaret explained in the video. She showed me photos of their house, cars, trips. I thought I was investing with a respected professional. Dozens of other victims began to emerge. Serena had used my identity to convince at least 20 people to invest in fake schemes, totaling over $2 million in fraud. Each victim who came forward brought more evidence, more documents, more proof of the scheme's extent. Leo tried one last desperate gambit. He posted a TikTok video claiming I was part of a financial mafia that controlled the cryptocurrency market in Miami. He showed photos of expensive cars and luxury apartments, suggesting my wealth was the result of illegal activities. The video was a complete disaster. Not only were his allegations easily refutable with my public transaction records, but he inadvertently admitted to stealing my personal information, including private photos of our home. This added invasion of privacy and identity theft to the growing list of crimes. More importantly, Leo's video was seen by federal agents investigating a money laundering scheme involving cryptocurrencies. They recognized Leo as someone who had appeared in their previous investigations, connecting him to other crimes he thought he had left behind. They're not just criminals, Frank observed. They're incompetent criminals who can't stop incriminating themselves. While watching the complete collapse of their plans, I felt a cold, calculated satisfaction. It wasn't anger. It was the same feeling I had when a complex market analysis proved correct. I had read the situation perfectly, prepared the necessary contingencies, and executed the plan with surgical precision. They had completely underestimated who I was. They thought I was just a computer nerd who wouldn't notice their manipulations. They never imagined that the same mind that detected billion-dollar fraud in financial markets could easily identify domestic fraud. 6 months later, I was sitting in federal court in Miami watching Serena and Leo receive their sentences. The judge, Honorable Patricia Williams, had before her a pile of evidence so extensive that the trial lasted only 3 days. There was no possible defense against the mountain of proof Frank and I had compiled. "Miss Martinez," said the judge addressing Serena, "I rarely see a case where the defendant so meticulously documented their own crimes. Your social media posts, videos, and messages constitute a complete confession of fraud, blackmail, and conspiracy." Serena was crying at the defendant's table, but her tears no longer had the manipulative effect of before. She had been convicted on 15 federal charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and organizing a pyramid scheme. The sentence: 12 years in federal prison and $3.2 million in restitution to victims. Leo received an even harsher sentence. His previous criminal record weighed against him, and the threats he made during the panic period were classified as witness intimidation. 15 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole before serving 85% of the sentence. "Mr. Maxwell," the judge continued, "your attempt to blame the co-defendant for crimes you clearly helped plan and execute only demonstrates your lack of character. This court will not tolerate criminals who take advantage of others' trust to finance luxurious lifestyles." After the sentencing, I spoke briefly with Margaret Thompson and other victims in the courthouse corridor. All received full restitution through assets that were recovered, money Serena and Leo thought they had hidden forever. "Mr. Mercer," Margaret told me, shaking my hand, "thank you for exposing these criminals. If you hadn't documented everything so carefully, we never would have recovered our money." "The truth always emerges," I replied, "especially when people are careless enough to leave digital trails of all their crimes." In the following months, my life took a completely new direction. Several federal agencies approached me for consultations on digital financial fraud. My experience in detecting suspicious patterns in the market, combined with what I learned about digital criminals during Serena and Leo's case, made me a highly sought-after consultant. I opened Mercer Financial Security, a company specializing in protecting people from investment and relationship scams. Frank became my partner, and together we developed security protocols that have already protected dozens of people from similar schemes. "You transformed your worst personal experience into a life mission," Frank commented during one of our meetings. "How many people have we saved from similar situations?" 43 confirmed cases, I replied, checking our records. "And each one reminds me why this work is worthwhile." I also created the Thompson Mercer Foundation for Financial Security Education, named in honor of Margaret, focused on educating older people about how to identify and avoid digital fraud. The foundation has already trained over 500 people in free workshops. A year after the trial, I received an email that made me smile. It was from an FBI agent who had worked on the case. "Alex," he wrote, "thought you'd like to know. Serena tried to organize an illegal gambling scheme inside federal prison. She was caught in 2 weeks and lost all privileges. Seems some people never learn. Leo, apparently, wasn't faring any better. According to prison reports, he had tried to convince other inmates to invest in a revolutionary exercise system he would develop when he got out. The other inmates laughed at him. 2 years later, I received an anonymous email. It had no identifiable sender, but I knew who had sent it. "Alex," the message read, "I know you'll never forgive me, and I understand. I want you to know I think every day about what I did. Prison has given me time to reflect on who I became. You didn't deserve what I did to you. No one deserved it. I hope you found peace." I deleted the email without responding. Some bridges, when completely burned, cannot and should not be rebuilt. Today, 5 years later, I have a life I never imagined possible during those dark days in Miami. My South Beach apartment became my company's office. The room Serena used to record her spiritual guru videos is now a conference room where I teach people to protect themselves from financial predators. The most valuable lesson I learned wasn't about technology or investigation. It was about patience. The desire for immediate revenge could have led me to make mistakes that would compromise the entire operation. But silent, calculated, and documented revenge was far more devastating to my enemies than any direct confrontation could have been. Serena and Leo tried to destroy me financially and emotionally. Instead, they gave me the purpose I didn't know I was looking for. They wanted my wealth, but ended up giving me something much more valuable: the certainty that I can use my experience to protect other people from predators like them. As I once told Frank, they thought they were pulling off the perfect scam. Actually, they were building the perfect case against themselves. The real irony is that Serena's spiritual retreat ended up being exactly what she promised: a transformative journey that led her to discover who she really was. Except the discovery happened in a federal prison cell, and the transformation was from arrogant scammer to prisoner number 8474904. As for me, I found my own form of peace. Not through false spiritual practices or charlatan gurus, but through the simple and profound satisfaction of knowing that justice prevailed, and that my experience now protects innocent people from unscrupulous predators. If you enjoyed this story, like, share, and leave your comment telling us what you thought. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the bell to receive notifications of new stories like this one. Thanks for watching and see you next time.